So there are protected strikes, there are unprotected strikes. Some people will say there are legal strikes, there are illegal strikes. I don't know about terming a strike as illegal, but there are protected strikes and unprotected strikes. More often than not, the reasons why people go on strike is we need you to be able to listen to us. Now, maybe the last thing we can handle is, as an employer, can you terminate my employment because I participated in a strike? As I have been telling you on this channel, if you have learned nothing, all the laws in Kenya have to stem somewhere in the Bill of Rights or in the Constitution.
Sometimes we bash the political leaders for being corrupt, and we forget how corrupt ourselves as Kenyans are. I think what the government should do is to ensure that essential services like healthcare, education, treat these guys well.
Airport.
Airport, like, guys, the airport is the face of the country.
It is.
When people are coming from other countries,
It's the first point of contact.
yeah. Hi guys, welcome to the rundown.
My name is Mihala Barasa.
And I'm Danu Nzyuko.
And today, Danu, what are we talking about? But before, we are marking exactly 1 year since we started this channel. We are at roughly 308 subscribers, which is a lot. That means that you guys subscribed every day apart from Sundays, which is a day that you rested. So this year, let's do a little bit better.
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Yes.
Share in your groups. Yes. I am excited for where this channel is going. I think 308 subscribers, to me, with the kind of content that we put out, is not a joke.
Yeah.
It might look like a few people, but I liked the concept of put 300 people in a room.
Yes.
That is like how much you guys have shown us love.
Yeah.
Might look like a small audience, but we appreciate it. So today, we are starting off with a hot topic. We are speaking about workers' strikes in Kenya. Workers' strikes in Kenya. So are we starting off?
Okay, so I think we should start off with a recap of the strikes that were there in 2024. I think one of the strikes that took center stage in the news was the doctors' strike that lasted 56 days.
Yeah.
That's a long time. That's almost 3 months.
That's almost 3 months.
Yes. 2 months. That's 2 months.
2 months.
Yes, that's 2 months. That's a long time not to have doctors at
work.
Yeah.
Considering they're an essential service.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So the strike started in March, and I think this was a strike that was basically advocating for the implementation of the 2017 CBA that had been signed with the KMPDU. Yes.
When we speak on, sorry to cut you short. When we speak on this channel, we imagine everybody knows what a CBA is.
Okay. All right. My apologies.
Yeah.
So a CBA is a collective bargaining agreement. So this is where a union goes and negotiates for the whole pool of workers. Yeah, so it's not just for one person. Ideally, for most of our jobs, when you're being hired, you go, you meet the HR or whoever is in charge, and you discuss your own salary by yourself and your own terms of employment. But a collective bargaining agreement is where you negotiate as a group.
block.
Yes. So, and it covers the different job groups from entry level to the highest level. Yeah. It covers what are your terms of service. Even, it can go even up to the number of hours you're supposed to be working, because we've had issues. I think one of the biggest issues that the doctors were having were about the work environment. They wanted a more conducive work environment.
Yeah.
Yes. So a collective bargaining agreement covers a lot of things. So it depends on how strong your union is and how well your union leaders know how to negotiate. Yes.
And it also depends on whether or not your union leaders will get to the table and get compromised.
Yes.
Because there are some CBAs that will be negotiated, but they will be negotiated with the union leaders in the pocket. So it also depends with how well your union leaders know how to navigate areas where there's money that can be poured
Yes.
to dilute your needs as
Yeah.
a workers' union.
I think you've brought out a very interesting point. Sometimes we bash the political leaders for being corrupt, and we forget how corrupt ourselves as Kenyans are. Because when you've been voted in by your fellow workers to champion for their rights, and then you meet the political leaders, and you allow them to corrupt you. So you gain, while the rest 500 of your colleagues are suffering. That's not nice. That's shady.
That's shady.
Yeah. Let's do better, guys, in 2025.
Then KMPDU, what's KMPDU info?
That is the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union.
Good.
Yes.
Now you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Continue.
All right. So that was the first strike that happened in 2024. The other strike that followed closely after the doctor's strike was the clinical officers strike, which was being headed by the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers. So I think this one was a bit like, it's like at some point it looked like they had joined forces
with the
with the doctors.
By then they issued a strike notice.
Yes.
I think this January.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think they should be on to strike, or by the time this episode has aired, probably they'd be already on strike.
Yeah. So they were also fighting for similar issues, their pay and also their work environment. Yeah. Another one that happened around September was, so I'm not sure if it happened really. It was the airport workers.
Yes, I remember.
They had issued a notice to go on strike because of the Adani deal. Yeah. So they wanted to know once this public-private partnership between the government and Adani takes effect, what's going to happen to Kenya Airports Authority, what's going to happen to their jobs. There was lack of clarity around that.
It, yeah.
And that's what they wanted to know. This deal that the government wants to get into,
how
will it affect us as workers?
Yes. I remember that one
Yeah.
as well.
And then also in September was a hot month.
It was.
Yeah, there was a lecturer's strike. That is the Union of
Wasu. Yes.
Yeah. So Wasu in full, please remind me.
University Academy Staff Union. Yes.
Yeah. So Wasu issued a strike notice in September. The strike went on actually for a long time, up to November. And this was because the 2021 to 2025 CBA that had been signed with Wasu had not been implemented. Yes. So the government got into an agreement with them to have that CBA implemented in 2 blocks. So there was one that's going to be implemented this year. Part of the money will be dispersed this year. Then the rest will be dispersed, I think, in 2027. So that, I guess, they went back to work based on that.
But they had also threatened to strike again, I think, just
recently. Yes, in January.
Was it in January or was it in December?
Yeah, they had threatened, and then I think
people went back to work. I don't know what the government told them.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's the agreement to implement the CBA in 2 tranches.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the last strike was the teachers' strike, which also happened in September. This one had a lot of issues. The first issue was the fact that they hadn't hired junior secondary school teachers. There were teachers who had been on internship for almost 2 years. Sometimes even the government, guys, how do you keep people on internship for 2 years?
And you know, the same thing was happening to intern doctors, yeah?
Yeah.
The same thing was happening to intern doctors. And you see, my office, my law firm office, is in Upper Hill, somewhere near where TSC is.
Yeah.
When you see those teachers going there, like, it's usually almost always packed. When you see them going to collect their letters, and it's usually come back. Like, even us who have offices near there know that teachers have a lot of complaints.
Yeah. So I think basically, I think what the government should do is to ensure that essential services like healthcare, education, treat these guys well.
Airports.
You know, airport, like, guys, You know, the airport is the face of the country.
It is.
When people are coming from other countries.
It's the first point of contact.
Yeah. And when you have disgruntled staff at the airport, guys will be like, where? Have you seen how Kenya is? You know, how the airport is.
You know, when we were going to compete in SA, that particular day, the airport workers in SA were striking. Let me tell you.
So it's not just a Kenya problem.
Just a Kenya problem.
Okay, good to know.
All of us were being served by one person. That line was so long. At immigration, it was so long. I'm sure there are people who missed their flights. We're just lucky our stop was in SA.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not, I think it's a universal problem.
Yeah. So, and also I think sometimes when I was looking at the amount of money that's being promised in some of these CBAs, I ask myself, is there a way we can reduce the amount of money that we are paying the members of parliament?
And give it to them.
And give it to these people.
Yes.
Yes. Because, I mean, these guys are not working. The members of parliament are not
barely
working. They are barely working. They are passing whatever they are told to pass. They don't read. They don't care. So
they don't try to understand our problems.
Yes.
And you see, people like, for me, I've always felt like health workers should be one of the most well-paid people. For me, it's health workers and
teachers.
Kwanza elementary school
I know.
teachers.
Kwanza, now that we've come from the December holidays, you've spent a month with your children. Imagine these people spend a whole year with your kids. You guys are tired.
Every day.
And you're thinking these people shouldn't be paid well. Guys, let's get serious. So these are some of the strikes that happened last year. So on to the next area that we'll be covering this episode is, are strikes legal in Kenya? And this question goes to our resident advocate of the High Court of Kenya.
Wow. Wow. Are strikes legal in Kenya? Yes, strikes are legal in Kenya.
Yes.
So we go back to the basis of where strikes are. That brings us back to the Constitution and back to the right to fair labor practices. Fair labor practices includes the right to participate in the activities of a union, a trade union, or to participate in a strike or a lockout. So that gives the basis of whether or not strikes are legal.
Okay.
Now, then you boil it down to what are the elements of a strike that is legal, or sometimes they are called protected strikes. So there are protected strikes, there are unprotected strikes. Some people will say there are legal strikes, there are illegal strikes.
Yeah.
I don't know about terming a strike as illegal, but there are protected strikes and unprotected strikes.
Yeah.
What are protected strikes? The very first element of it is your union has to have issued a 7 days notice of strike to the minister and basically to the public to say on this and this day we are going on strike for reasons 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if there is no notice already, the strike is unprotected.
Yeah.
Or if the notice is shorter, then already the strike is unprotected.
Unprotected.
What is the basis of the 7 days? 1, give notice to the minister, give notice to the public, and give notice to the members of the union that on this day we are going on strike on a certain day. It's to tell the minister, please note on this day, these people will not be at work. They'll be out in the streets demonstrating, or they'll just not be at work. Maybe they'll decide to stay home with their children. It's also to kind of just notify the public and to say, on this day, this service might not be available to you. So those are some of the reasons why you give a notice.
Yes.
The other reason that I have come to learn through courts is the 7 days sometimes would give the employer or the government some time to go to court under certificate of urgency and probably challenge the pending strike. Because they'll say, oh, this is the subject of probably a conciliation or a disagreement that we are still trying to sort, and we have 1 or 2 or 3 things in place.
Okay. I think maybe just to add on what you've said, one of the issues why a strike can be termed as illegal is if there was a court order that had been issued for you to go back to work, and then you still stay on strike. Then at that point, that strike will be termed as illegal. Yeah. Okay. And also, in the event that a resolution has been reached with your union leaders and it's been signed and they've agreed, but you decide that the rest of you are going to stay on strike. At that point, I guess that's what you're saying. You're unprotected because your union leaders have signed that you guys are supposed to be back at work. Then you decide, I'm still going to stay.
I'm sitting at home.
Yes, I don't like the terms, so I'm going to stay. Okay, so maybe you can give us specifics. Which are the laws or the regulations that actually protect the strikes?
Okay, so first is it's the Constitution, the right to fair labor practices. As I have been telling you on this channel, if you have learned nothing, all the laws in Kenya have to stem somewhere in the Bill of Rights or in the Constitution.
Yes.
So that is the first thing, the right to fair labor practices under Article 41(2)(d) of the Constitution.
Yes.
Then after the Constitution, then you go to the Sector-Specific Act. In this case, which is the Sector-Specific Act, it's called the Labor Relations Act. So the Labor Relations Act is the parent act that deals with strikes and lockouts. So there's strikes, that one is by employees. Then there's lockouts, which is by employers. So a strike is me and you, we choose, our union says we are not going to work for reasons A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like we said. Lockouts is me as an employer, I say I'm closing shop for the day because there are elements of your employment contract that people are not honoring. Both of these most of them are usually emanating from activities of unions. Mpaka hapo tumepatana. Which part of the Labor Relations Act recognizes the right to strike? That is Section 76 of the Labor Relations Act. Gives you the right to participate in a strike or a lockout and activities of your trade union. The other thing is, one of the things that I need you to understand, and the reason why one of the biggest content that we push on the rundown is KMPDU content, is because the right to strike and the right to fair labor practices is one of the fundamental rights. And especially because a collective bargaining agreement is something that your employer and the union get into, and they agree on how some things should be done. Should that not be done, then what is one of the recourses? Because there's so many of us, the best way to try and enforce that decision or get that decision looked at is through a strike. So a strike is considered as one of the fundamental reprieves to unionized workers. And then there's the other thing that we've not probably mentioned about strikes, we've talked about notices, is there are some services that are termed as essential services. So a lot of essential services are quote unquote, let me say, prohibited from going on strikes. So what is an essential service? I remember during COVID, they were like, we are lawyers, we are essential services. I don't think lawyers are an essential service.
We are sorry. No.
So the essential services are things like the way we said, education, health. I would imagine airport is also an essential service, but these ones are usually things that are determined by the minister to be essential services. But we've gotten to a place in Kenya where essential services are also going on strike. How is this happening? We got into a collective bargaining agreement way back in 2016. It's not been implemented 10 years later. What is our reprieve? Our reprieve is to go on the streets and to go on strike. So that is where that need to come out for strikes emanates from. There's something else that Grace mentioned. She said if your union leaders have negotiated and agreed that people are supposed to go back to work, and then you don't, that becomes an illegal strike. She also said something along the lines of, if the thing you're striking about is the subject of something that was already maybe quote unquote sorted through conciliation. A lot of what is happening in Kenya is the union leaders might go and agree, but we are still aggrieved. That is one thing. The other thing is, we might be in the process of trying to resolve the issue, but we are not seeing a resolution. So we see a lot of unions or a lot of employees will really still participate in strikes. Are those strikes legal? Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. But more often than not, the reasons why people go on strike is we need you to be able to listen to us. Now, maybe the last thing we can handle is, as an employer, can you terminate my employment because I participated in a strike? One, that will be breach of the fundamental right to fair labor practices. Number 2, it will be against the provision of the Labor Relations Act that says I can participate in the activities of trade unions or in a strike as long as the strike is protected. In case I participate in a strike that is unprotected or illegal, what is your reprieve as an employer? You don't just wake up and terminate me. Again, I need you guys to understand this very well. Anything that I do as an employee that you do not agree with, you take me through the entire disciplinary process.
Yes.
So if the strike is illegal or there's any irregularity, then you take me through send me a notice to show cause, let me show cause, notice of disciplinary hearing, take me through the hearing, give your verdict.
Yes.
And that's whether the strike is illegal. If it's illegal or a protected strike, then that one you cannot, by any circumstance, or you're not supposed to take me through disciplinary action.
Okay, well said and well put.
The beautiful thing about the employment court is it is very employee-centric. So there's 2 decisions I want to read for you. 1, Kenya Ferry Services Limited versus Dock Workers Union. I guess dock workers are also an essential service. And this is a 2015 decision where the judge says, the court, in finding that a strike by essential service workers should not be deemed illegal on the face of it due to Section 81 of the Act, that is the Labor Relations Act, and that's the section that says essential services should not go on strike, it says, 1, the right to strike transcends the interest of the involved employer and employee. Number 2, strike action, particularly in essential service sectors, have ramifications for the public and the national economy. The right to strike, therefore, is therefore balanced against the fundamental rights of others. Similarly, the fundamental right of the public to essential services must be protected. These are 2 inseparable fundamental rights involved and which are recognized by the International Labour Organization under Convention 87 and 98. That's a bit irrelevant. If the court simply looks at the service as essential and declares the strike illegal, it will have misperceived the nature of the right to strike and the freedom of association, and therefore collectively misrepresenting the right to collectively bargain, contrary to Article 24(1) of the Constitution of Kenya 2010.
Yeah.
In a more recent decision, County Government of Kisii versus Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, and another, the court says, the prohibition of strikes is in an important sector such as health is reasonable and justifiable. Okay. It allows, number 2, to allow strikes would have the effect of prejudicing the rights and fundamental freedoms of the general public. Fair enough. Further, the right to strike guaranteed under Article 41(2)(d) of the Constitution is not an absolute right. Fair enough. I therefore return that Section 81 of the Labor Relations Act, which prohibits strikes in essential services, meets the threshold set under Article 24 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 on limitation of the rights and fundamental freedom and amounts to a reasonable limitation to the right to strike and does not in any way conflict with Article 41. So there's conflicting decisions. Some courts will say, okay, you can go and strike.
Yeah.
Some of them will say, you are an essential service. So the courts are split on it. But either way, I do agree with you will not limit my right to strike just because you want to strong arm me into compliance.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so the other thing that I'd like us to talk about is what is the role of labor unions in Kenya or trade unions in Kenya? Okay, so maybe just to start us off, the first thing I would say is the main work of a labor union is to advocate for better working conditions. Yes, it's basically to protect the members of that union, to make sure that they have good working conditions, and in the event that they are not, they champion for better working conditions. That's normally the first thing. And a lot of times we normally see a lot of the unions that are very strong, I would say, are for the lower paying jobs.
Job cadres, yeah.
Yes. And I think it's important to have those unions just to protect them, because there are employers who can be exploitative. So when you have these unions, it's good because the employees and the workers are protected. Yes. And if they have a grievance, they can be able to go to their union leaders, speak to them, and tell them, in company X, this is how we are being treated, and we need better working conditions.
I think I keep saying this. One of my favorite unions is the domestic and health and allied workers. Could they hear? Let me
Those
tell
guys
you.
are fireworks.
If you find a house help that is aware of their rights and pays their union dues every year, and you mistreat that domestic manager of yours, and the union gets wind of it, and they go to court, you are not going to have an easy time.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the strongest unions I know in Kenya. Yani, uko milimani, they are taking people like this. You've been paying your house help 5,000 shillings a month. Suddenly, she has a judgment of like what, 60,000.
kutoka Uganda.
You're like, even her whole salary for a year is not 160,000.
Yes.
So it's one of those strong unions, and this is also to say, if you have a domestic manager or a domestic workers, don't mistreat them, pay them well. Find out what the minimum wage is. It's okay for you to even just put them hapo kwa minimum wage to save yourself the pain. Because if they get to that union, and that union gets wind of the fact that you're mistreating them, they're going to have a field day with you in court.
And one of the interesting things is a lot of unions actually give free legal advice to their union members. Yes. So don't imagine just because it's a union of people who you imagine are not educated that they don't know what they're doing. Free legal advice.
What's the maybe I'm thinking about something else, but no, it's the labor officer. Sorry, I was thinking about the labor officer.
Okay. Yes. So basically the unions represent the workers, just as we've been talking about during negotiations. So a lot of the times that we see where they negotiate together for pay is for where probably a lot of times where they're working in similar industry and things like that. Also, the fact that they are representing the workers, it covers a lot. So it's not just championing for their pay. A lot of the unions even give them financial advice. They also help them get things like insurance, help them in terms of investment and things like that.
Which union is that? Do I need to join a union?
Wait, lawyers don't have a union?
Not that I know of.
Not that you know.
No, because but us, we can fight for ourselves.
Okay. Anyway,
You try mistreating us.
Hey, we can't. We are, we cannot, guys. Don't even try. Don't even try to go. I'd be very curious to see whether a lawyer has ever been taken through a disciplinary hearing in a company.
Oh yeah, by the way.
I would be very curious to read those notes. Like,
Do I know any? But
that would be a very nice pastime. And then they did.
Akawambia? What did she say after?
Yeah.
Eh?
They came with evidence.
Receipts.
Anyway, it reminds me of a story of a guy who was taken to, you know, the way you have boss that is like witch hunting you for some reason you're not getting along. Then they take you for a disciplinary hearing. The guy showed up. He had printed emails. Dosia. He's like, don't try me. Yes.
This day you told me this.
Don't play with me. He got out of there, guys are like, Yeah, so if you go for a disciplinary hearing, guys, carry your evidence. And also, one of the things a lot of people don't know is when you're called for a disciplinary hearing, you can actually go with your lawyer. Yes. Let no HR lie to you that you can't come with someone from outside. Show up with someone.
Bring someone. Bring someone. Bring even a character witness. I
Yes.
usually advocate for people bringing a character
A character witness is actually very good. That's a very important thing. Yeah. Anyway, let me not get into that. I've seen a lot of places where people mishandle disciplinary hearings, and I'm like, it's just that the labor office has not shown up at your
has
door.
not caught up with you.
Yes. Yeah. So even as employers, be very careful. Handle disciplinary processes very carefully, step by step. For anything that you feel that this person, it warrants even a summary dismissal, take them through the whole
entire process.
disciplinary process. Yeah. Okay. So as we gear to wrap up the episode, I want you to tell us a little bit about Kotu.
When you hear Kotu, you start to think Papa Atuoli.
Yes.
That's the first thing. First of all, I was telling Grace today that the offices for Kotu are in Gikomba. And she didn't know.
I was shocked. I didn't know by
Did you know the offices for Kotu are in Gikomba? Did you? Like when the main entrance for Gikomba Market, literally opposite. There's a purple building with their full, color in their full glam. So probably, I don't know how I totally gets there with this Prado. But that's the story.
Maybe the driver drops is like, shuka mze, shuka mze.
But also their watchmen are usually like, usisimame hapo. You probably know where Kotu is, you just don't know it's the one. So the next time you guys go to Gikomba, like the main entrance, look on the opposite side.
Yes.
The Kotu offices are there. But Kotu is one of the biggest workers' union organizations in Kenya. And what does Kotu stand for? Central Organization of Trade Unions. This means that any trade union in Kenya is under Kotu, or at least most. So fundamentally, I think there should be around how many? 40 what?
45.
Around 45 trade unions in Kenya, and at least 32 belong to Kotu. So Kotu is kind of like the dad and mom of all trade unions. This is why every other Labor Day, you will see Atuoli going to say, oh, the private security workers need this amount of a raise, all the other laborers need this amount of a raise. So the Central Organization of Trade Unions houses all trade unions, and they help in championing strikes, in championing better wages, in championing better pay for members of these unions, and just in trying to make the working environment favorable to all laborers in Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting to know. So one of the things I was actually thinking about as we were preparing for this episode is, can any profession set up a union?
That's a good question. There's something, maybe that's not part of what I prepared for, but there's a cadre of employees in an organization that are usually, quote unquote, not allowed to be part of a union. I know that. I think if every profession wangejipanga, we could have unions for all of them. Yes. But I like the unions for the larger professions and the unregulated professions especially. Because you see something like lawyers, I think we would be too loud to be in a union. I don't know if there's a union, but we would be too loud to be in a union. And then I don't
give
imagine
employers headache.
I don't imagine at a union of CEOs.
Yeah, of
Like,
course
come
not.
on.
Yeah,
but I think if
yes, and in a lot of actually government institutions or parastatals, there are certain job groups that are not unionizable. Once you get to a management level, you can't be allowed to be in a union. Yes, because you're part of the decision-making process. So the people who are unionized are the lower
cadre employees.
Yes. Yeah. So depending on the job group. So sometimes probably when you're starting your career, you'll get in, you'll be unionizable. But then as you grow and you get into management, now you're no longer part of the union. Yeah.
Which I think is also a good thing. I think it's a good thing because at the end of the day, you don't want to be making and bashing the decision at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. Makes sense. All right. I hope you have learned a lot, or you've enjoyed the episode. Whether you've learned or you've enjoyed, whichever works. Yeah. Please subscribe to our channel. Please. Yeah. And if you like listening to our beautiful voices, you can follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Yeah. It's been fun hanging out with you guys. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.